Hey everybody, welcome to the live chat, our Thursday 3 o'clock Central live chat. There was a little bit of a time issue. I had put the wrong time in there, but we are starting now and getting ready to talk all about Paisley feathers. So this is a little bittersweet. This is the last video in the Flora and Foliage Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. A little sad because it's been fun working through this panel. A little sweet because it's quite the deadline every week to make sure I get that video out. I'm so glad if you've been participating that you've been doing that. And even if you're behind or haven't even started, it's totally fine. The videos will stay here until you are ready for them. So no pressure at all. But let's talk about that Paisley feather. I saved it for last because it's my favorite. It's kind of like a party trick. I kind of think that anybody, if you can do it, people are always impressed, but it's not that hard. I always hate to tell people how easy it is because then it's like, oh, well, but it is so easy. Now we're going to talk through the design. I'm going to show a couple pictures, and then I've got my trusty whiteboard out so I can draw out some designs, and we're just really going to kind of unpack this. Before we do that, I just want a couple things. There was not an expanded resource PDF for this week. I just been busy, crazy busy, didn't get around to that, but hopefully the free diagrams will help you out. Secondly, lots of questions about the borders. How are we going to quilt the borders? Next week, our live chat is going to wrap up the whole kind of challenge, kind of summarize it, show some pictures, kind of answer any questions you have about it, and then I'll also give tips for quilting the borders. So definitely check in next week, same time, same channel. And then, so let's look at what we've got to talk about today. First of all, let's talk through the pictures. Now, it's kind of funny because this video brought us full circle from the first video. So in that very first video, second video, we kind of saw Paisleys for just a brief second in video 2, but now we're kind of really building off of that. And having the elongated swirls first, I feel like kind of helped build up to this so that hopefully if you're quilting along, you feel a little bit more prepared for this one. So let's talk about the different examples here. So the Paisley feather is basically an elongated swirl with lots of Paisleys going along it. A couple things I want to show you though. We're only adding a feather, or those Paisleys on one side of the feather, just because that's the easier way for me to do it. I know that sometimes quilters will find that one side of the feather is easier than the other, and so it's like, oh yeah, just do one side, but you could definitely do both. It's up to you. Just keep building up and filling around that. But you can really decide how much you want those individual feathers to stand out or how much you want them to blend in. It really just depends on what you put around them. Now, just like all the other designs that we've talked about in this challenge, you cannot judge one Paisley feather by itself or even one little Paisley. You have to see it in the context of the whole design. You have to keep filling in those areas, keep going, or as Lynn said, you have to echo on. I told her in the chat, I said that's going to be my new motto, echo on. So when you're quilting your Paisley feather, one question that came out or has been asked a lot is how long should your initial swirl be? That initial swirl that we're going to echo around. And the answer is it doesn't matter. You can make it as long or as short as you like. Now here's the thing. On a short-throated sewing machine, my Paisley feathers tend to be a little bit shorter. I quilt as far as I can go without repositioning my hands. So it's only going to be probably about 4 or 5 inches. Now on a long arm, I have a little bit more freedom of movement, so they might go a little bit longer, especially if they're angling horizontally with the machine, but ultimately it doesn't matter. And I know I said this a lot, but it's not the size of the design that determines the density, it's that spacing between the lines. So don't worry too much about the size of it, but definitely keep it within your frame of comfort, right? Don't try to feel like you have to really extend out past your comfort zone with that, because we could just build it up with those Paisleys that go around it. And if you remember, we talked about in the video, try to make that initial swirl a little curvy. I'm going to do a little drawing and we'll see kind of why that is, but that's really going to help kind of make it look elegant. And also, if our eyes can't follow it super easy, we can't see any mistakes that there might be. So again, trying to keep it curvy and filling in those areas. And this is a sample that I quilted while I was filming. And if I want to put more echoes or more Paisleys around it, it's going to make them all kind of blend into each other and kind of give me that nice all-over design. Perfect as an all-over quilting design. The reason that works is I have to keep the spacing the same on those echoes. So if I'm doing a 1/4 inch spacing, I'm trying to keep that 1/4 inch the whole time. However, if I want those individual feathers to stand out just a little bit more, I'm going to use something that's contrasting to fill in that area. And so in this example, I did pebbles, but anything that has contrast. Anything that has different density or a different shape, different direction is really going to help make those pop out. And as an aside, it's a little bit easier to quilt a little bit of pebbles than to quilt a whole big section. So usually by the time I get a little grouping going, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done. That's enough of that. So you can really kind of create the effect that you want. Now, a question came up, and the question came up was, can we quilt them in a row like we did the swirl chain? And the answer is yes. You can use this as a border design. I had to cut that out of the video because the video was just so long. So we're going to talk about that here in a second. But just know that you can use this design just as you would use a feather. It can be a motif, it can be a border design, it can be an all over, it can be anything you want it to be, and it's going to add beautiful texture to your quilts. We're going to talk about some troubleshooting here in a second, but the thing I want to encourage you is really extend those Paisleys out into space. And I even had my marking tool where I marked out that first one just to really kind of get comfortable with that. And I can't remember if I left it in or not, but I always say finger size. I'm imagining a little finger kind of coming off of there. And you know you're doing it right if it looks weird. If you've quilted your swirl, you've echoed it, you have your Paisley, and you're like, I don't know, this is looking weird. That means you're on the right track. Now you have to echo around it. So really extend it out into space. Or instead of quilting that Paisley or marking that Paisley, you can mark out a reference line to really extend it out there. And that's going to help kind of give you a reference to work with. Quilting them shorter is going to make it not look quite as lovely. It kind of just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't make it look the way I want it to look. Of course, as long as you do it consistently, it's going to be fine. So there's that. And then on our panel, what makes this design great is we're filling in this kind of irregular area, right? I have this flower and I have the edge of my quilt, and I'm just quilting that Paisley feather and then using the echoing and more Paisleys to fill in any gaps between the edge of the area and the Paisley feather. So this is going to be a great example of kind of working that design and filling in that defined area without, feeling like you have to really plan it out. Again, just focusing on keeping the spacing consistent is going to give you that beautiful texture. And then here you can see a little bit more up close. I'm quilting these kind of in a row down the area, but it doesn't have to be that way. And then using some different fillers to make it pop. Now I showed pebbles in the video, but you could do wishbones, you could do back and forth lines, you could do smaller swirls. Really any filler would be great. And sometimes I even switch up between fillers. I don't feel like I have to use the same one all the time. So you can really kind of create the effect that you're going for, and a little bit up close. Now, in the video, I said when you're echoing, don't bring that line all the way down to where it touches. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on the whiteboard, just so you can see why I don't want you to do that. But use that foot of your machine as a guide. As it approaches that previously quilted line, it's time to stop and change direction. We don't want any thread buildup because that's going to draw attention to that area. And so keeping those lines a little bit further apart is going to keeping those lines from landing on top of each other will help give it that nice effect. Don't worry if it touches a couple times. I'm just saying use that foot of your machine as a guide and it will really, really help you. All right, so this is a class sample. So when I would travel and teach, I had little quilted samples. And then this one is just the Paisley feather with a filler. So just a different example. But what I want you to notice is the Paisleys are a little bit shorter. Those initial swirls a little bit shorter. They're not super long, but I'm still getting that same effect. So again, it doesn't matter how long your swirl is, just make sure you keep that echoing consistent-ish, as consistent as possible. And then here's this example, the Paisley feather, where I don't want them necessarily to stand out too much, so there's no different filler around it, there's just more echoing. And this is with the contrasting thread, and you can start to see like that beautiful texture. If you look close, you'll see some areas where you're like, wow, that looks really weird. But the most important thing is that you fill in the whole area. That is the most important thing. And as long as you fill everything in, it's going to look good. So that's there. Now let's talk about how you can build off of this design. I so badly wanted to talk about this in the video, but I thought, you know what, I don't want to overwhelm or scare anybody. But once you get the hang of this design, you can really embellish it and do all sorts of fun stuff with it. So starting with my elongated swirl, you can see right here, I have my swirl, I have those Paisleys coming off of it, but then I threw in a leaf with pebbles in it. Now, how fun is that? That's already been in our challenge as well. Well, throwing in these other shapes is just as easy as quilting the space, filling it in and echoing around it. And it's going to just give it a little bit of a more elegant look. It takes a little bit more thought, right? I have to change direction, like my mind, what I'm doing, but ultimately it's pretty easy and it's going to give me a pretty serious wow factor. And then because I really wanted them to show up, I added some dense filler all around it. So in this instance, it's much more of a motif. It's much more of a framing element because it's actually working its way around the quilt, but it's the same way. It's quilted the same exact way as the Paisley Feather because it is a Paisley Feather. One thing I want to point out is notice in the swirl, so as I quilted my swirl, I left it more open so I could put some filler in there. But when I'm quilting all over, I tend to fill in that swirl with the initial one, with the initial line, and then echo. It doesn't matter if your swirl is open or if it's closed, just make sure you fill it in. So I'll show you what that looks like when I draw it out, but just keep that in your mind as you're quilting along. So another kind of close-up picture, and I had one with or there's two in there, and I had a couple over here. So you can really kind of have fun with this, and I kind of call this like show-off quilting. I was having fun. It wasn't so much about the quilt at this point, it was about the quilting, and you can really have fun with that. You can also combine it with feathers. So elegant feather, this is like the backtrack feather or like the bump hump feather. I can add that around the outside if I wanted to. It's going to give it a slightly different look because that particular feather, the petals are a little bit more of the emphasis as opposed to like the whole overall of it. But it's just a fun, different idea. And then obviously, I don't know why, I must have got bored of doing that and switched to a different design, to the leaves and then the Paisleys. So you can really, really have fun with it. Again, that's only meant to inspire you or show you what you can do with it. It's definitely not meant to overwhelm you. All right, so let's draw on my handy whiteboard here. First things first. When I'm quilting my swirl, doesn't matter how long it is, I like to make it curvy. Now the reason is because this is very similar to the elongated swirl. It's the same shape, so I'm just going to keep that shape in my mind and go with it. But once I have my line, I'm going to echo, echo, echo. All right, here's the thing. I'm going to show you how I talk about how I echo, but the main point, it doesn't matter how you echo this, just echo it. That's it. But how I like to do it, or what my routine is when I come in, I like to make my second echo smaller, meaning I like to come inside that curl. It's just how I do it. The reason is if I make it smaller, it's going to be easier for me to quilt. As I'm quilting that echo line, I don't want to have to sustain that curve for a long time, and if I keep going around the outside, it's going to get big, big, big. So, all right, so I'm coming in, I'm coming out. And another thing I want to show you is look how small this curl is. This is pretty small. I would say like $half size if we're looking at a dime or a money reference. Because what I want to do is as I come inside, come out, then I'm going to work my way back around here. And usually, most times, this gets closed off right here. What I mean is I don't have something, let's see if this will show, I don't have something like this real open. It's just kind of closed off. It does not matter though. Remember, this is just how I do it. Okay, so the reason that we're echoing around it, I know I said in the video, is because we want to build this up. Since we're going to be putting these elongated Paisleys around it, we're going to be echo, echo, echoing. I don't want this to disappear. So I do quilt about 4 lines. That's kind of the reference I've got there. But once I get to this point, then it's time to start adding my Paisley feathers, or my Paisleys, so they work around the swirl. Now, I know I said that in the video. I want to work around this outer swirl because it's going to help it take up more room. It's going to help it kind of build up nice and big. And then we know I'm going to echo, echo, echo. I know it's kind of sloppy, but you can imagine that it's pretty quilting, right? All right, remember the V? The V is where we want to be. We know all of this. Now, the reason I don't want to pull my lines all down to touch is if I keep coming back down and coming back down, I'm going to start to get thread build up right here. And what's going to happen is that is going to start taking away from the overall design. Because where the quilting is different is where our attention gets drawn. So it's kind of like the opposite of leaving a gap, right? It's kind of like you're building it up. And that's fine if you do it all the time, but just know that's going to get very thready very fast. So that's why I would stop before you get there. So if I'm quilting my Paisley, I'm going to come here, I'm going to stop just short, and then echo and do what I need to do. So hopefully that makes sense. Another thing let's talk about, and I didn't get a chance to put this in the video either. I know I mentioned in the video that I like to quilt my Paisleys so that they kind of bend over a little bit. That's just, you know, my style. So nice and curvy. All right, so when I quilt my Paisley, they tend to kind of droop over or curve down. I just like the way that looks. I feel like if you have a straight line that's not perfectly straight, somebody could look at it and say that's not straight. But if it's curvy, who's to say it's not supposed to be that curvy or not, you know? So I just feel like it hides a little bit more mistakes, but it doesn't matter, right? I could quilt mine a lot straighter if I wanted to, but I'm still going to echo, echo, echo. It's just gonna look a little different. That's fine. So if it looks like this, that's great. I still want it to extend out the center, and I'm still gonna add my echoing. However, if you kind of like that little bit curved, you can try to quilt it a little bit curved over. All right. Another thing I really want to make sure, let's get up here where you can see it. Sometimes if we quilt our paisley and we don't echo enough, we get these gaps between them. All right, well, we know how to handle this, right? This is not the first time I've said it in this challenge. We're going to come back, we're going to echo, echo, we're going to fill it in. Whether I do it now or I do it later, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to make sure that I fill that in with some echoing. So really extend it out, but just know that even if you don't like how it's looking, we can just keep building up around it and keep, you know, kind of giving it that focal look. All right, so let's talk about putting them in a chain. So to get to the next Paisley feather, I'm going to echo to where I need to go. This is amazing, right? Because I can echo here or echo there. But if I'm quilting it like a border, I'll just kind of make this smaller. And it's going to be kind of quick, so just pretend it's really pretty. I'd definitely give it a few more echoes, but you know. All right, what I'm going to do is now, once it's done, I'm going to echo to where I want to add my next Paisley. So if I'm making them in a chain, I want that to be over here, right? Because that's the way I'm going. So I'm just going to echo my way around and get to that point. All right. One thing that I do that is totally optional, it's just my habit, it's my thing. I like to quilt the next one so it faces the opposite direction. Does it change anything? I don't think so, but it's very similar to the elongated swirl, so it's just how I work. So if this one curls up to the left or the top, this other one is going to curl down. And even though it looks like it's just kind of hanging out there, just long swirl, it doesn't matter. I'm going to echo, 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 and keep filling it in. And then start quilting those Paisleys and working my way around that side. Now, I will say there are times, depending on the border, if it's a very big border or my Paisley feathers aren't quite the right size, that's a time when I might put Paisleys on the other side as well. It doesn't matter, just if I need to fill in a little bit more room. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to have this gap right here. That's the bottom of my border. So how are we going to handle that? Echo, we know that's always the answer. And it doesn't matter what I echo, I'm just going to fill it in. Now this is a perfect example of, do I want this Paisley feather border design, do I want it to stand out and really kind of like draw attention? If that's the case, then I'm going to do some different design. So wishbones, some pebbles, anything like that, back and forth lines, if I want to stand out. But if I'm just practicing the design, I don't want it to be quite this big of an element, then I'm just going to use echoing to fill in all that little gaps and then continue on to quilt my next Paisley feather. The thing is though, you can fill in those gaps while you're there, or you can come back. What I mean is I could go ahead and quilt my whole chain of Paisleys and then decide how I feel about it, and then I could fill in around it, or I could do that as I go. Honestly, it depends on the machine I'm quilting on and what the situation is. On a long arm, if I'm quilting this in the vertical border, I'm going to fill in everything while I'm there so that I don't have to come back and do it. But on a sewing machine, it's not quite a big deal to just echo my way back. So really, it just depends on how, what you're working on. Okay, a couple more things real quick. Hopefully you're tracking all right. So if I'm quilting them in a border, it's all fun and games, right? Until it's time to turn the border. So doing that is actually not difficult. Sorry, go a little bit taller here. Like this. It's going to be very similar to how we did the swirl chain, where I'm just going to extend it in a different direction. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine in this border corner that there's a line connecting the inner and outer corner, and I'm going to quilt that Paisley feather until it crosses that line. The reason being, I want to really get it out in that space so I can turn the corner. This area is a lot bigger than this area, so it's going to help make sure that I don't turn too soon. Okay, so let's say I'm quilting my Paisley feather. This is gorgeous. I'm echoing, echo, echo, echoing. I'm not doing that in the drawing, but we're just going to pretend. I'm going to echo to get where I need to go, It's too soon to turn direction, right? I can't turn now, so I'm going to keep going. There we go. So now I'm kind of falling on that. Perfect. I'm going to continue. I will say it's the echoing that's going to help group this together so it doesn't look like random sections just put together. The echoing is going to kind of help pull it all together. And I'm still going to do the same thing, right? I'm still going to add my Paisleys. And I will, in general, I usually leave a gap on both sides. That's just how I do it. I'm trying to think, is there a reason for that? But probably just how I've always done it, because I can come back and add my echoing or what have you then, or whatever I want then. All right, so I'm still going to go all the way to here. And now I need to quilt my next paisley feather so it goes down, right? So I'm just going to quilt it in the direction I want it to go. I have a couple options, but I usually like to get kind of around here, a little bit higher, and then extend it like this. Again, I don't know why, it's just what I do. But turning the corner is as simple as taking it that different direction, all right? And then using those paisleys to fill it in. Again, as long as it's all filled in, it's going to look great. It's going to kind of blend together and kind of give it that cool look. Now, of course, you're going to have a lot of space over here and less space over here. That's completely normal. But I just know that I'm going to come back in later and either add echoes or filler and just fill that in. So don't stress out about it. I think sometimes we worry too much about it. We're just going to quilt it the direction we need to go and continue on. And just like the swirl chain, I think I said in one of the chats, you know, I can quilt it in sections so it can wrap around things, it can go different directions. This is exactly the same, so you don't have to stress out too much about that. Okay, so Judy had a question real quick, and we'll kind of demonstrate here. She said, how do you keep your paisleys from looking like leaves? Well, if we remember, our leaf shape is a little bit like that. We're adding our echoing. So if you quilt your paisley, you know, where it's not bending over, it will kind of look like a leaf. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that, honestly. That's just my opinion. But if you want, you can, if you quilt it so that it kind of hangs over a little bit, I think it will look a little bit more like Paisleys, in my opinion. So kind of wrapping, and I think it also kind of helps them fit together a little bit better. I think as you're quilting Paisleys that are a little bit more straight up, that's going to kind of, I don't know, give it a different look. So I like to kind of wrap it around like that. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully it looks like a Paisley. And I did just think of one more thing I want to talk about, and I had to edit this out of the video too. The idea that you want to leave yourself an emergency exit, right? Leave yourself room to get back out. So if you're like, what are you talking about, Angela? That's weird. Well, what I mean is if I'm filling in a defined area, and let's say I have my Paisley feather, the problem with these is that they're directional. So if I'm not careful, I'm going to get some gaps. And that's just going to happen. That's totally fine. But let's say I'm working my way around this Paisley feather. I know that this is the last time I'm going to be in this area. By the time I add my Paisleys, I'm going to be pretty much blocked out of that area. So what I might do is I might just quilt them smaller, or I might just go right into echoing. I want to leave myself right there a way to get out, right? So now I can come in and echo, fill this in, do whatever, and then that last line will get me out and continue on. Is it always going to work out that way? Of course not. If you're normal, completely normal, you're going to end up getting stuck. You're just going to travel on out, or you could break thread and tie off if you want. That's up to you. But I'm definitely going to leave myself a little bit of room to come out. Now, that means, that is assuming you feel comfortable with the design and you can think ahead of where you're going. If you're still learning the design, don't even worry about this. Just practice quilting it and practice, you know, just getting comfortable with the design. This is going to come with feeling comfortable with the design. That probably is also, now that I think about it, why I keep this spaced out from borders, because then I can quilt it and then I can just come back and use my echoing to fill it in. But obviously there might be a reason to my madness. I don't know. All right, I said one last thing. I do mean one last thing this time. Let's talk about that curvy spine. So again, I like mine to look like the elongated swirl. It doesn't matter how long. And really, you could do a couple ways. It doesn't even have to be that shape. It can be any kind of curvy shape. But the reason I like doing that is if I'm quilting my swirl and it gets kind of flat, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't look, I think, as elegant. It's just a little bit more, I don't know, it's just my opinion, I suppose. I mean, it still looks fine, but it just doesn't look the same. So you can kind of decide how you feel about that, but I feel like having that wave to it, and honestly, that's the same with feathers. I like to quilt the spine of my feathers so it has a curve. So this is exactly the same as that. Hopefully that makes sense. but really it doesn't matter, right? If you do that, you like how it looks, keep going. If you do it and you don't like how it looks, keep going and try it different next time. Try not to obsess about it, because once we fill in the whole thing, it's going to look fantastic. So try not to be too worried about that. All right, so that was all the questions I think I had. Hopefully, I'm going to peek on over and see how it's going over here, see if there's any questions. All right, so watching the top and handles under is hard to do. That is true. All right, so the idea is, as you're quilting a Paisley feather, it is a really elegant design that's really fast and really easy to quilt. If I'm quilting a Paisley feather, it's really big, it's gonna go pretty fast. And that's nice, because sometimes I just want that beautiful texture. Like I said, I would use this as an all-over design over the whole quilt, or you could shrink it down and make it more of a filler or an element, or string them together to make it a border design or something that moves along an area. I've used this in all kinds of quilts, from ultra traditional to modern. I've used it in a quilt that looks like a landscape. It was like a seascape thing, and I used it to look kind of like kelp moving through the area. So you can really do a lot of different stuff with this. So hopefully I've convinced you to give it a try. Now, once this chat is over, if you have any questions or you're like, I don't remember that part, definitely leave them in the comments below. I love to answer them, and I know other quilters love to get on there as well. And if you've been enjoying this challenge or any of the live chats, I hope you'll give the video a thumbs up, because that really helps other quilters find it. Well, I'll be back next week where we'll talk about quilting the borders of our challenge panel, and we'll kind of summarize everything from leaves and pebbles to swirls and Paisley feathers. So thanks so much for joining me. I will see you next week.